Madam Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of National Security, Force Personnel Officer, Mr. Gobaya, Commissioner of Police, Commander of the Defense Force, other members of the High Command, members of the Media Corps, and you, our listening audience, a pleasant good afternoon to you. And we thank you for joining us today for this broadcast. We are here to address the recent upsurge in violent crimes in our community and to reassure our residents that we are taking every possible step to make you safe. We understand that this increase in criminal activity has been a cause for concern for many of you in our community. We want to assure you that we are fully committed to addressing this issue and that we are working tirelessly to bring those responsible to justice. And so today, the Commissioner of Police and the Commander of the Defense Force will address you on the issues at hand, and thereafter accept your questions from our esteemed members of the media present here today. We just ask that when you are asking your question, you would indicate or identify yourself and the media outlet which you are representing, and then you would ask your question. The Commissioner would make his initial presentation, and then the question and answer session would follow from members at the head table. We want to thank you again for joining us, and we now invite Commissioner Sutton to make his initial presentation.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Thank you very much for your presence here this afternoon. I am James Sutton, the newly appointed Commissioner of Police of the Royal St. Christopher and Nevis Police Force. We are here to update citizens and residents alike on the recent crime situation in our country and our way forward to address, handle, and remedy this unwelcome threat to our lives and livelihood. I must say this is not the preferred conditions in which I wish to address you, but we must do so to allay the fears and apprehension of our people and to reassure them that we are doing all we can to restore the state of calm and normalcy. Our presence must be felt and seen in our communities, and we intend as an organization to carry out our mandate to always be present, willing and ready to secure the safety and security of all. We are working assiduously to remedy the situation by working as a team to put plans and other security measures in place to curb the stem of this cancer called crime from among us. We will not rest until we achieve our desired objective. Firstly, we must foster trust and have legitimacy in the communities we serve. However, meaningful law enforcement engagement with accountability to the communities are essential underpinnings of any effective strategy to address violent crime as well as important as it themselves. Distrust hampers the organization's ability to work collaboratively with those affected by violent crime, to build a culture of respect for the law, and to be meaningful partners with community leaders. Secondly, we must continue our investment in the community-based prevention and intervention programs. The government has played and will continue to play a major role in their commitment to providing financial support as well as implementation and continuation of social and educational programs to assist the police in their crime-fighting efforts. Thirdly, we must set strategic enforcement priorities. In many communities, violent activity is concentrated in a limited area and committed by a small number of people who are often connected to gangs and other criminal networks. Many of them are violent repeaters. the police are most effective when we focus our limited resources, limited enforcement resources on identifying, investigating, and prosecuting the most significant drivers of violent crime. Most recently, we experienced 3 homicides within the past few days. The homicides were committed on Saturday morning and Monday night, respectively. These investigations are in the initial stages where persons are being interviewed and while we await the autopsies of these on Monday, the 27th, a group of persons went snorkeling at the Peninsula Cove on around just about 9:30 a.m. A British citizen by the name of Andrew Evans experienced difficulties amongst the group, and he was given 4 cycles of CPR, but he was unresponsive. He was subsequently pronounced dead by a district medical officer. We are waiting the post-mortem as to the cause of death. Earlier this morning, the St. Kitts Nevis Coast Guard responded to a distress call about 20 nautical miles off of St. Kitts, between St. Kitts and Antigua. As a result of this distress call, one vessel was found in a distressed state with a number of persons on board, some being in the water. The Coast Guard went into action and were able to save 6 persons from that vessel. The search continued, where about 3 bodies have subsequently been recovered. To date, the preliminary information we have is about 32 persons were on board. So we are continuing this investigation at this stage. That is my presentation for now, while I wait your questions in this regard. Thank you.
Yeah, we just put it. Somebody saying the.
So we ain't coming back up here.
No. Nobody coming. Just on the end.
So you can. Yeah, that's it. It's too much moving. That's the easy now. Let's make that back over now. Let's put back this way to him. Add the close.
German Abel, SK and Vibes. I just want to start off quickly with something that you said. I'm guessing it's for corrections for the record. You said 6. Is it 6 or 16 people who would have been?
It should be 16, sorry, my
16.
bad.
Okay, and while you're at the mic, so at this point, you can say that 19 persons have been recovered in general from this morning.
That is correct.
Okay, I want to quickly go to 2 questions on this same topic. One, can you say what sort of interactions the police and immigration would have had with those persons? Because the reports that we have been getting is that the vessel that sank this morning would have been stolen from Antigua, and would have also been stolen from Guatemala. Can you, or Martinique? Can you speak to that?
Okay, I will let the commander of the defense, Colonel Comrie, answer that question.
Good afternoon. All, thanks for your question. From our initial report is that the vessel would have left Guadeloupe sometime probably a week ago, and it was in Antigua for some time, and the vessel would have left Antigua last evening. This morning, the vessel was reported missing from Antigua.
Okay, and can you say whether or not those deceased and the entire group of 32 were actually Africans from Antigua, who came from Africa but were residing in Antigua?
From our initial report, the 16 persons that we recovered, 2 was Antiguans and 14 was Cameroonians.
Okay.
We don't know the 3 bodies.
Okay, and around what time did you guys receive or would have found those bodies?
They would have been after 9 this morning.
All right, thanks.
And as we speak, we are on the scenes searching for more bodies with the assistance of the French aircraft.
Calabash, that is Broadcasting Corporation. Just to follow up, can you give us an idea of what exactly happened with the vessel?
The vessel has since sunk.
Yeah. But do we know how?
No.
Okay.
That wasn't reported. What caused the distress?
Okay. Another question. It was mentioned that there have been 3 homicides in the last few days. What is being done within perhaps the communities in terms of policing to make sure that this does not happen again? Is there a way for the police to probably have a sense of things that may be happening to be able to curb this kind of thing in the future?
Okay, what we are doing we call hotspot policing, where we are engaging and involving the communities on twofold, in that we are giving the assurance that we are with them and providing the security and having that level of trust with the community, because in order for us to tackle crime, we must have trust from the persons in the community. Having said that, we are, as I said, identifying persons and see how we can engage them. You know, the government has the alternative program, alternative pathway program, that again we are partnering with the administrators to see how best they could assist us in that regard.
I want to go back to the Coast Guard issue. Second? Oh, yes. Glenn Barrett, SK Newsline. What we're missing from this entire story really is what transpired in terms of the communication between the vessel and Coast Guard, or various Coast Guards from Antigua and Barbuda and St. Kitts, and there's also the involvement you mentioned of Martinique. Explain what was the communication situation on that matter.
Thanks again for your question. Apparently, the vessel got in distress some 20 miles off St. Kitts, and in so doing, they would have sent out an SOS, and it was picked up by Martinique, Fort de France in Martinique, which is our search and rescue center, coordinating center, and they will in turn have sent out a message. that was picked up by Antigua, ourselves, and also a vessel that was in the area.
Now, with regards to your equipment, what asset did you take to go and do your rescue services?
We dispatch our safe boat. It's a 33.
It's a what?
Safe boat, a 33-foot vessel with 300. Can do in excess of 30 knots.
So how long did it take to reach the scene?
And I'm not sure because it was in the wee hours of the morning, and it was dark, so you have to go drive with care.
Okay. I'm puzzled though. Martinique is quite a long way away from St. Kitts. In fact, the boat is much closer to St. Kitts than it is to Martinique. Why didn't the communication for the distress picked up by our Coast Guard?
The vessel is a French vessel, French registered vessel. So apparently there's equipment in it that communicate to Martinique.
All right, so there is no international distress signal that is accepted anywhere in the world?
Channel 16, however, if there's a, what do you call it, EPIRB on the vessel, that once it's submerged, it will give off distress, and that will be sent to Martinique. And Martinique will in turn will, because there's a coordinated center for search and rescue, they will receive that signal and they will convert it into voice and send it out to us.
Okay. One other issue on that, some years ago, I think probably about a year, 2 years perhaps, there was an indication that the Coast Guard were to receive some new vessels coming out of Europe. What has become of that project?
I'm not aware of.
Not aware of that.
We are receiving vessels from Europe. I know we went and do a preliminary check on some vessels, and in Holland, and based on once we was there, we had some issues with the company, so we discontinued that negotiation.
So what's the current situation now in terms of acquiring necessary vessels?
I traveled to India recently. I went to Calcutta to check out the vessel, and that presently is in negotiation. And we also observing different avenues in terms of getting a vessel to replace our flagship Coast Guard pedestal.
Okay, a couple of follow-up questions. One, where are those that were rescued? Were they brought to shore in St. Kitts, and where are they being housed? And can you address, there were early reports in the media regionally that the vessel was heading to the USVI. Can you speak to that, as well as the fact that there were reports that the distress signal was picked up by a passing vessel or something of that nature, before I continue with the police?
Initial report is that the vessel departed Antigua for St. Thomas with 32 persons on board. The distress signal, as I said, it was received by Martinique, which we broadcasted it, and we pick it up as well as Antigua and a vessel.
So it was not, so the reports are not correct when it said that it was the vessel, a luxury vessel, that actually got that distress signal first before the authorities?
I can't speak to that. What I was advised is that Martinique got the information, and then we broadcast it and we pick it up.
Okay. To the Commissioner, you spoke about building relationship and partnership in the fight against crime, but over the last, you're taking over the police at a crossroads when it comes to the behavior of officers within the police force, and that is what, to an extent, is creating the distrust amongst the communities across both St. Kitts and Nevis. We had a couple of issues last year, for example, or during Carnival, where we had an officer basically technically slamming an individual on the ground based on the videos. Then you had, probably earlier that year or the year before, you had an officer standing on the back of another person in a hot concrete drain. How are you, as the leader of this law enforcement body in St. Kitts and Nevis, going to be seeking to, one, address the behavior of officers in your police force, and two, also build that trust that has been eroded somewhat by the behavior of officers in the police force. Second question has to do with guns. It was said early last year, that there were homicides that were occurring over the last decade was being commissioned by guns. There were double-digit percentage of crimes being committed by guns. How is the police force going to be working to alleviate that specific problem in light of the fact that we don't produce guns? Bahamas has been complaining. Regional leaders have now moved to basically take American gun manufacturers to court over this issue, because it seems as though somehow it's coming through the borders. So how are you going to work to deal with that?
Okay, let me deal with the first question with regards to the behavior of police officers. Police officers are not above the law, and we have established a unit within the organization called the Professional Standards Department, which is tasked with investigating police officers who have been unprofessional towards the members of the community. And that is one of the areas that I intend to beef up and have some enforcement in that area. Because if we are promoting community policing and the police officers are being unprofessional with members of the communities, it defeats the whole purpose. So that is the first and foremost of accountability and respect. Okay, with respect to that. With regard to the gun, yes, I'm aware of some 2 Caribbean countries along with Mexico taking the U.S. to court. This has to be a holistic approach. We're going to have to use a lot of technology, but at the same time, we have to do with education. We have to educate our communities as well, because guns are not the way we should go. Guns were made to kill. Okay, and guns by themselves cannot kill. It takes people to kill people with guns. So what I would say is that I am going to resort to technology, whereas I'm thinking about enhancing capabilities at the enforcement agencies with respect to the police and customs, because it appears that some of the guns are coming through our legal ports. So we have to stamp out that as well. Okay? So we have to deal with that and a more holistic approach.
Okay, a quick follow-up. Can you say how many officers or instances of misconduct were placed before the commission or the body within the police force, accountability? Professional standards. How many officers or cases were reported to that body, example for last year? And how many officers were reprimanded for not being accountable and respectful to the police force and the uniform that they're wearing?
Okay, with regards to the discipline of officers, I do not have the figure at this time. But for the past 2 years, we have not had much disposal of cases in that regard. And I believe that is an area where I will have to strengthen when it comes to the disposal of these matters.
Commissioner, one of the challenges that the police force may have been experiencing over the years was the generally low detection rate on major crimes. Do you see any, when you look at your records now, do you see any change in that direction? Are we increasing the number of cases that are being solved? And then secondly, what is happening in terms of professional training? And I'm not talking about general police training. I'm talking about specific training to criminal investigations, forensics, and that kind of thing. What's going on that stage?
Okay. And with regard to specialized training, I have a lot of focus is on that, because I believe that, okay, we were somewhat handicapped because we only, in some cases we had one person trained. So I want to have a more diverse field to choose from when it comes to that type of specialized training. I would like to see much more persons trained. I know over the past 2 years, as I said, that had hampered our training and development. But that is presently training is one of the things I'm looking for. I've identified in going forward. Not only specialized training, but overall training, because some of the complaints I have had with regard to the police officers, they will communicate with the public. There's a great need for customer service and delivery in that regard.
Okay. And the other matter relates to, well, similar to what you're saying, police and the community. When you walk downtown and you meet a police officer, you say good morning, they say nothing to you. I am beginning to wonder if this is the kind of instructions that are given, not to speak to the communities, but it kind of sends a kind of signal that, hey, we're not supposed to mix, we're not supposed to talk, and so it leads into the psyche of people not necessarily wanting to cooperate or collaborate with the police. So maybe we're getting mixed signals here.
Okay. Remember, the police the police officers come from the community, and to me, that's something along with I've observed with our young people as well. Because as police officers, we are told to greet persons, to be respectful. That is where I was trained, to say good morning, good afternoon. Because it's something you have to have, because when crimes are committed, we go to the public. 90% of the times, the police are not present. And we can't wait until when something happens to go and speak to people. We must always have that line of communication. So that is something that we'll have to work on. As I said, our customer service need building. Okay,
Commissioner, there has been a problem for years, especially with the police force. More specifically, outside your office window. A lot of tickets have been issued time and time again to people who've been parking really bad. But yet, your officers, I'm not going to single out anyone, your officers have been doing the same thing, and it's a reoccurring problem, even though it was stopped and continued sometime after that. The parking on Lozak Road, outside Warner Park, on the yellow lines, not only police vehicles, but government vehicles as well. What is your plans more specifically to deal with that, one, and two, the issue of the traffic problem, especially speeding, one, and two, drinking and driving, because apparently that's the cause of the speeding in most instances and accidents. What's your plan to tackle those three issues, basically?
One of my hallmarks is road safety. I don't believe the police are above the law, okay? But sometimes persons believe customs become norm. My approach to it would be to speak to my officers, a sit-down talk with my officers, because if we are to lead, we must lead by example, okay? That's with Lozak Road, because it has been a perennial problem for some time. I know that I have just been appointed Commissioner of Police, and I'm just building myself, because the public expect great things. The police must lead. With regard to speeding, my approach will be to equip the police with the necessary tools, radars, and we have to do educational programs, because it's not the enforcement is of the law, but to have the educated community. If you're going to leave home at 7 to go work for 7:30, and you know the traffic going to be on the road, you leave earlier. Because speed, and you get in an accident, you don't reach. So we have to educate our public, because vehicles are very expensive. And what was the next one?
I think you answered both of them. You
Okay.
answered both questions. Yes.
Commissioner, as you just mentioned, you just stepped into the role.
Mm-hmm.
What challenges have you encountered so far, and what is your greatest challenge, and what is your main focus at the moment?
Okay, Some of the challenges are in adjusting. Everybody wants to see the commissioner, and there are a lot of engagement because you have to let's set the platform on which I am going to lead. I intend to lead by enhancing some of the products that we have had. For example, the crime prevention, with community policing, road safety, human development, the use of technology. You have the better collaboration with other agencies. The seventh aspect of my leadership would be evidence-based policing. What that is saying is that we're going to use data to guide our decision making. We're going to look at our crime statistics and let's say where crimes are committed, who are the persons involved to make our decision. We're going to look, I'm looking at, as just mentioned, the police behavior. One of the things I'm contemplating is camera, body cams for police officers when they engage the public, because cameras will give us a better picture of what we are dealing with. So it's a holistic approach I want to deal with, because no matter what I do as commissioner, I want it to reflect a true picture of law enforcement, not as a combative arm of government, but an embracing arm with our communities.
Okay, Commissioner, final question from me. Seven-point plan is good, but realistically, what sort of time frame do you give yourself to say that the police force is actually making success, making headways? I know you might say, might want to argue homicides are down, but the argument has always been that homicides are down, but other criminal activities are ticking up, right? So what time period or how long do you wait to say, okay, I am actually, is it a short-term, long-term goal that I'm actually giving myself to say, we have actually, my plans are a success going forward, or you know, when you review it, do you give yourself a year, 2 years to ensure that all the plans that your roadmap that you laid out is actually working?
Okay, it's difficult to put a time frame for it, because when crime fighting, you can have a good month now, and next month you have to refocus your attention on certain things. So you have to look at, for example, end of the year, what your stats look like. Okay, for example, if you look at, you do a comparative for how many murders you had in 2022, you'll say 11. At present, we have 7. Can we put measures in place to curtail that? But we'll have to have the community engagement. Or if you look at our break-ins, you have to look at your break-ins. What is it is causing the break-in? Where the break-ins are being committed? Because some of these break-ins could be avoided, because you have asked the community to put certain measures in place, put cameras as deterrent, but no one wants to put the cameras. The government has installed CCTVs to assist in our crime fighting measure. So it varies. You cannot say you put it like a year, 2 years. It all depends on the situation, because it's a fluctuating situation.
But realistically, though, I know you spoke about all the 7-point plan. Realistically, how many of them you believe will actually bear fruit? I know evidence-based policing and all of that, but it's one thing for you to, because over the years, over the years there has been an issue of police. We've taken this person into custody, we've charged them, but that is where the disconnect comes, because you have the evidence, but the prosecution is not successful in getting that person through the system, into prison, serve their time, rehabilitated. Because I think it was said a lot of the people who are committing crime are basically reoffending. And while on that note, can you also say, realistically, where is the CCTV program right now? Is it fully functioning? Has there been any successful prosecution in terms of solving the crimes when it comes to the CCTV program?
Okay, let me one of the areas my main focus is training and development for police officers. Because if you have better trained officers, refresher courses, it will improve throughout. It will have a holistic approach. It will improve our response, or the way we deal with customers, and it also improve our productivity in regards to our policing. Okay? With regard to what you asked about the statistics about the CCTV, I will let the person in charge of crime deal with that. That is ACP Mitchell. No, when you speak about identifying a case where CCTV played a significant role in the apprehension of.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, CCTV has played a major role in crime fighting. Since the installation of the program 3 or 4 years ago, we have had quite a number of cases being detected from CCTV. I recall just recently we had a conviction there with the guy Kasim Buchanan, that with CCTV as well as DNA were used. And what you find happening that quite a bit of the cases, homicides, robberies, have an element of CCTV. So they have been very tremendous in the solvability of serious crimes. It's for us now to build up, continue to build on what we would have achieved over the years. But I can safely say we do not have the stats. I do not have the stats right now, but it has played a major role in crime solvability, and we intend to use it to the best of our advantage.
On this, on the issue of forensics, what does your laboratory, what else does it require to become a full-fledged center on forensics?
Well, we have done a lot of work on our forensic lab over the years. We do a lot of document examination, ballistics, processing of exhibits. We rely on the company Cellmark Inc. out of the UK for the diagnostic part of it. So I believe over time we have a timeline which we hope over the in a not too distant future we can move to diagnostic. I think that is the other part of it that is required to make the forensic lab fully functional.
Okay. And then there is the matter of the alleged passage of guns and ammunition through our legal ports.
Yes.
How are you going to address that situation?
Well, the Commissioner would have alluded to the measures that we are putting in place to address that. Importantly, we also have what we call the roadmap. The roadmap is a program that was devised by the regional ministers of national security in Trinidad in 2019. That roadmap has 4 goals. It has 55 priority actions, and it also has key performance indicators. The goals is to build capacity. One of the goals is to build capacity amongst law enforcement officers, which we have done over the years. We would have trained our officers on serial number restoration. We would have trained our officers on not only police officers, but law enforcement, custom officers, on the identification of component parts and so forth. There's another aspect of the roadmap which deals with preventing the diversion of firearms from our stockpile. So it's a very comprehensive program. It entails working with our international counterparts because it's very important that we engage persons where the guns come from so they can work with us in an effort to identify these guns, identify the players that are involved. Over the years, we have had a number of players through the same process being arrested in the UK, being arrested in the US. So we have done quite a bit in the whole effort of reducing the proliferation of firearms to the Federation. There's work to be done, and as the Commissioner said, we have to continue to collaborate and to cooperate. We also have to educate, as the Commissioner alluded, and continue to build the capacity of law enforcement officers. Yes. If I just piggyback on the question that Ben Bart would have asked earlier, pertaining to you mentioned the low rate of detection. Over the years, we would have invested quite a bit in our human resource investigation, while we see prevention as a first approach, we also recognize the importance of the detection of criminal matters. People want to know that their matters are being solved. To that end, our officers have been trained up in all aspects of investigation, homicide, robberies, investigative interviewing. We have seen the detection rate climb considerably. In the last 5 years, it has been 40 or above. That is the overall detection rate. 2021 was our best year, 45% in recorded history. Last year, in terms of homicide, we would have achieved a 73% detection rate in homicide. The previous year, it was 57. So it is not correct to say that the low detection rate, we want it to be over 50%, 60, 70. But I think we would have made considerable strides in terms of improving the detection rate and assuring residents that when a crime is committed, the matter will be solved. Yes.
Just before that, I just want to quickly follow up on that point. You're talking about successful, well, detection rate.
Yes.
But then the question was asked earlier as well. When you talk about the detection rate,
Yes.
Is it the detection rate or the successful prosecution of those who you detected do you guys really look at? Because it's one thing, again, that's my question earlier, is yes, you detect Tom Jones, John Doe, but then the matter is lost in court. So how do you guys really rate detection? Because from my understanding, it's once a person is before the court.
Detection is determined when a person is charged for an offense. That's the way you look at it. That's just the way it's done internationally.
Yes, but
if you're talking about a conversion from detection to a successful prosecution, that's another matter. We have had quite a number of serious crimes, persons being convicted. There are also a number of cases where the case is not successfully prosecuted, because if it's dismissed, it's not successfully prosecuted. The police are charged with the proper investigation of the matter, quality investigation. We strive to do that. We strive to make sure that the prosecution has the best case to put forward to the jury. We will continue to do that through training, through the education of the public, because they also have a role to play, because they are the ones who sit and determine cases. If you may ask, yes, there's work to be done, but we have a new commissioner, we have a new high command. We will continue to work with our community. We will continue to train up our officers. So at the end of the day, we have cases that are put before the court that can stand the test of time.
I'm not sure who this question would go to, but it's a question with regard to tinting. There are drivers who are unaware of the law as it refers to tinting. Can you give us an idea of why it is important to make sure that persons abide by this law? Why is it so important?
Yes, I'm very much aware of the displeasure of a lot of our drivers and owners of vehicles with the police's effort to keep them in line with respect to the light transmittance value that the law permits on vehicles. Now, we are law enforcement, and the law requires drivers, motorists, to have their vehicle tinted no darker than 35% of light transmission. That is the law. And so if you have it less than 35%, we're just enforcing the law if we ask you to take it off. But the reasons for doing that is twofold. One is safety, and two is security. Persons who do not have any good intentions can use darkly tinted vehicles to hide their nefarious activities. We've had cases where persons actually sit in dark tinted vehicles and surveil their victims. They drive around heavily armed, looking for victims. And so, in order to prevent them from carrying out their crimes using the cover of tint, then we have to go on an all-out enforcement in preventing persons from carrying dark tint on their vehicles. We cannot be selective and only target one group of people for removing their tint. And so we have to do it in a holistic way and ask everyone to keep their tint within the prescribed limits of the law. And that is the security aspect of it. The other aspect is safety. If your vehicle is tinted beyond what is prescribed by law, then it limits your view of the road. Your view of the road is somewhat impaired, especially in low lighting conditions like bad weather or at night. You're not able to see the road as clearly as you would with a lighter tint, and so it increases the risk of accidents. And we've had accidents that were the result of persons not having a good view of the road because of their tint. And so in order to keep our communities safe, we have no other option, no other choice but to enforce the law and to keep persons within the framework that the law describes.
Okay. Are there exceptions for police officers in terms of their private vehicles?
No, there are no exceptions, and I know that is something that we grapple with, and we have been enforcing the law in relation to those officers who have their vehicles, private vehicles, tinted. They have been taken before the court. We have evidence of that. So there are no exceptions. The law makes provisions for exceptions on grounds of national security and diplomatic grounds. Those are the only exceptions that the law provides for. And anything beyond that, there is no provision for exceptions, and so persons have to comply with the law, regardless of whether you're police or not.
My last question. The police force in general, are you satisfied that it is adequately manned in all areas? We have recruits coming in every year. Are there enough recruits? Are the quality of the recruits what you're looking for, or are you forced in a way to accept recruits that are let's say below par? I don't want to, I'm not really belittling them, but I'm saying that if you're trying to build a professional police force, you need a strong base, you need a strong foundation. And what I'm really looking at is, are you getting that strong foundation, and do you have the required numbers to effectively police the country?
Well, we can always do with some more bodies, some more manpower. And we are constantly recruiting officers, persons to be enlisted in the organization. Currently, we are below what our requirement is, and we are, as I said, constantly recruiting. In terms of the quality of persons that we are getting, we are not taking what we can get. We are ensuring that we have persons that meet the standards that we set for ourselves. And so those persons whom we enlist are persons who meet the standard. We're not taking anybody because we will want to have persons. We have the quality of persons. The government provides incentives for persons who have degrees. They are paid a scale above what they would normally get without degrees. And so that is an incentive for persons who have higher education to join. And we have had a number of such persons joining the organization. And so we are satisfied with the quality of persons who we are selecting. Of course, we will get all type applying, but we carefully select those who we enlist. And so we are satisfied with the quality of persons that we are recruiting, and we train them to the level at the standard that we require them to be.
That's a good question. About 30 years ago, the police, the army had the powers to arrest. Is that still in place at this point?
Those are limited powers that the army would get upon the decree of Her Excellency the Governor General. It was just this morning in discussion, the commander of the Defense Force had made such a request for for that to be, for those officers in the Defence Force to be given that power, but it's not a blanket power of arrest that Defence Force soldiers have, only in certain circumstances when they are.
So it's not in place right now?
It's not in place right now, but that is to be given serious consideration to address the current problem that we have.
I'm not sure if public will speak to this, but there were complaints coming out from the Defence Force about the way in which defence officers are being treated at this point in time. Can you address those? I don't know if you can speak to those. Because that's an issue. No, what I'm saying is there have been a number of complaints about the way Army officers are being treated at this point in time in the police force. For example, maybe the way they work or whatever it is, but then there were also allegations of quote-unquote assault and sexual assault and all that. Can you address those?
Thanks for your question. I know in the past we had issues, and we have since adapt or put into place certain policies to avoid situations like that going forward. We continue, it's a work in progress. We continue to put measures in place to arrest those activities and persons who have been, and we are cooperating with the authorities to investigate such matters and put them to rest.
How many persons were actually found to be, or were charged or reprimanded for such behaviors within the Army?
To date, we have 2 persons that have been charged, and they all are presently on suspension.
That's this year or last year?
Last year.
Okay, thanks.
Not last year, but 2021, 2022.
But how fast can you say, for example, outside of the sexual assaults and all of that and the abuse, that some other minor issues that were raised would be addressed? Because we know people are actually concerned that members of the Defence Force currently, who are quote-unquote disgruntled, may actually leave and weaken the strength and numbers within the police, within the Defence Force.
We have since requested the assistance of the JDF, the Jamaican Defence Force. We also had a commission of inquiry to look into these matters. So those recommendations have been considered and be put in place. And people will all be disgruntled because it's a defence force, and one of our main thing is discipline. And young persons today tend not to like to be disciplined. And once you're in a disciplinary organization, we have to be disciplined to get the job done.
I'm going to ask you a question. Last year we had a situation in Newtown. We had a recruit, because we're talking about persons who are of quality to be in the police force. We saw a video where a recruit came out with his a training officer, walked up to a guy, slammed him on the floor, and nobody heard anything else about that. Are we looking at, when we're recruiting persons, are we actually having background checks on them? And by that I mean, do we do a psychological check on them?
Yes, we do have background checks on persons before they are enlisted. That would include a medical history, medical check before persons are recruited. Now, that particular incident, as we had said at the time, we frown upon behavior like that. We do not condone officers abusing citizens or using excessive force without justification. That particular matter was investigated, and appropriate disciplinary charges has been brought against the officer, and pending. He's pending now at a tribunal. So that matter has been dealt with within our disciplinary code to show that we do not condone or encourage officers to behave in that way towards our citizens. All right, could we have one more question? It's 4 o'clock now. Okay, I'll take 2 from Win FM.
Okay, can you provide an update on that accident with the white lady who lost her leg an update on that situation, and also just to go back on what you guys started with, because I was late. Are you also suspecting that there is probably some sort of human trafficking ring in the region, especially considering that you are finding a few Caribbean people being called, seen amongst these strangers, in a sense?
Okay, I would take the accident question, and I would maybe pass on the human trafficking ring to ACP Crime or the Commissioner, whichever one choose. But in terms of the accident where the visitor lost her leg at the Southeast Peninsula a few weeks ago, the visitors, both of them, both the young lady and her husband, they have since left the Federation for medical attention in Miami. The driver of the vehicle, he has been arrested and has been formally charged for dangerous driving, and his matter is pending a court hearing. So we have dealt with that matter in terms of taking the driver before the court. So that is pending. I would turn to the Commissioner to deal with the human trafficking question.
With regard to your question of illegal immigration, I would not say trafficking. That is something that is permeating across the Caribbean. What we realize is that these persons are using or are traveling in small numbers with the use of our local fishermen. So it makes it difficult for law enforcement to zero in on this type of traffic or smuggling or movement of persons. But we are working in partnership at a regional level to address this problem, because we do not want it to escalate any further, or persons within the criminal organization to be profiting from such activities. So it is being looked at from a regional level, along with us also at a local level.
Commissioner, why do that? Are these people coming to St. Kitts and Nevis? That's a question that's been asked. When they go on the boat, are they coming to St. Kitts or are they heading to other jurisdictions?
Okay, when we interact with these persons, they're saying they are going to other places. But when they do come to St. Kitts, they don't want to leave St. Kitts.
That brings into question, and this will be for Coast Guard. Do we have enough patrols being done around the island?
Pardon?
Do we have enough patrols being done around the waters of the island?
The question is, what is enough? At present, we are expecting another vessel at the end of this month, and we are hoping to have coastal radars installed before the end of the year. And I think that should somewhat address the situation of our porous borders.
Okay, so we're looking at St. Kitts. What are we going to be doing for Nevis? Because
I'm speaking of the Federation. I'm not speaking of St. Kitts.
Okay. So you're having another boat. Would that increase patrols? Daily patrols?
Obviously. And also we are in negotiation with the Nevis Island Assembly to have a permanent Coast Guard based on Nevis.
Okay. Oh, Manpower.
I'm sorry. I do get the impression that Coast Guard is at the back of the line. Over the years, very little attention has been placed on Coast Guard. You get the attention on the police, you get some attention on the Defense Force, land base, but the Coast Guard is sort of relegated to the back of the pack. What is required to build a professional Coast Guard in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of human resources, in terms of technical things that you need and in terms of training? Where do you want to go with this Coast Guard within the next 3 years or so?
I'm not sure I agree with your assumption that the Coast Guard is at the back of the line. The Coast Guard, in terms of education, all the officers at Coast Guard, about 80% of the officers is, I must say, would have at least the first degree. The present commander of the Coast Guard have 2 masters. So education is something that we strive for at the Coast Guard. We also get assistance from partner nation, where we have presently we have persons in Barbados doing training, personally in the States, and we expect to have more persons go after training. In terms of assets, Coast Guard would have just received a spanking brand new Coast Guard building. It was not fully open, however, Coast Guard would have occupied. In terms of seagoing assets, as I said, we are in negotiation to replace our flagship Coast Guard, called the Stalwart, and we're hoping that that's a concern for the RSS in terms of having OPV, and we're hoping to plug that gap in not too distant future. The problem, though, is that to get a vessel of that sort, is a minimum time to get it constructed of somewhere between 14 and 16 months. So that should be another 2 years. As I said, we're hoping to receive a replacement vessel, a 40-foot, and also we're hoping to spread our wings across the Nevis in terms of having a permanent structure over there, so we could assist and more able to respond in a more timely manner from the Nevis end. So Coast Guard is going places.
I note in your answer that you keep using the word hope. So there seems to be a lack of definitive action in terms of the assets that is required for the Coast Guard to do its job properly.
I'm not the Minister of Finance. But we hope, we definitely, I think the vessel already shipped, so it should arrive by the end of the month.
At what cost will those vessels come? I remember when, since Stalwart, I know for sure that Trinidad had already built 3 vessels built by Amstel in Australia. We're talking about getting new vessels. Would that be a cost in between government and RSS?
No. The replacement for Stalwart is fully funded by government. And we're looking in excess of 10 million years. Thank you.
All right, I think that brings us to the end of the question and answer session. Just want to thank you for your questions. I know we spent a lot of time speaking about the tragedy at sea and our Coast Guard readiness. And those are important, especially the Coast Guard readiness. That's an important aspect of our whole thrust towards keeping our country safe. But we want to keep our message on point. We want to remind our citizens that the police are here to keep the community safe, but you have to play a role. We cannot do it alone, and so we ask you to take this important role serious. And if you see something suspicious in your community, please report it to the police immediately. Your vigilance and your cooperation can help us to prevent crime before it happens. We want to assure our community that we are doing everything in our power to maintain public safety, We understand that crime can create fear and anxiety, and we want to remind everyone that we are here to protect and serve. We thank you again for your attention this afternoon, and to you, the media, for your questions, and we will keep you informed as we work towards addressing this issue of crime in our community and ensuring that we bring our country back to a state of normalcy where we can all live peacefully and work happily within our communities. Thank you again for your attention, and we wish you Godspeed.